Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hope. My name is Tammy Lynn Connors. This is my podcast and YouTube channel, Helping Other People Evolve. Today, I have a very special guest, my new friend, Sonya. How are you today, Sonya?
I'm doing great.
Super duper excited to hear Sonya's story. She was introduced to me from a good friend of mine, Natasha, and we chatted a little bit, and I've been really excited about this. We had stuff going on last week. As you can see, I'm going to go ahead and point it out for you. Behind her, she's moving. So I'm just like thankful that you took the time out today, to get on here with us.
Absolutely.
So just real quick, what Hope is for me is helping other people evolve. And my mission and vision when I started this was just to help somebody that feels like they're struggling alone. I feel like, especially in the last 2 years, people are at home and they feel like they're all alone and nobody else is going through these struggles. Well, unfortunately, a lot of people have been through struggles, but fortunately, a lot of people come out of those struggles and have a strength. So when we're sharing these stories, which are all different types of stories of struggles, my hope is that you hear this story and you're like, oh, I can get out of bed today because I heard Sonya's story. I heard Keith's story. I heard Tammy's story. I heard Danelle's story. I just heard all the stories. So, when you hear those stories of hope, it's just to help you to get through your days. So I'm super excited. I don't know all of Sonya's story. I told her that we just like to share from the beginning, like we're sitting in a coffee shop. So Sonya, if you want to just share a little bit about, who you are, what you're doing, and maybe go back and, share your story with us.
Okay. All right. I'm Sonya. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so happy to be here. So I'm a recovering addict, and my clean date is 7/1/2019. So I've almost got 3 years clean, and I spent 20 years in active addiction. My addiction started when I was really young. I'm born and raised in Florida. So, when I was younger, my parents were together and we had like a cookie cutter looking type home. And I thought everything was great. I was an only child. I was entitled, like the world was at my fingertips, right?
Right.
Well, my parents broke up when I was 8, and my dad left my mom for a younger woman. And she was not but like a little over 18. So, needless to say, like she wasn't ready for kids. She didn't want kids, which put him kind of away from me. He didn't come around me much anymore. So I didn't have a father figure in the home. And I would say that, I was longing for that father figure for the rest of my teenage years, really up until now. But so my mom and I moved, and kind of our lifestyle changed, and she started dating different guys. And she's a single mom, so she was working all the time. And I was left at home to take care of myself often. I'd come home, do the chores and my homework and all that on my own. So she started dating different guys. And one of the guys that she started dating was an alcoholic. But I didn't know at the time that he was an alcoholic. I know that now that I have so much knowledge of addiction and alcoholism.
Right.
But I didn't know that back then. So that guy would be the first person ever to give me a cigarette, the first person ever to give me a joint, marijuana. He was also the first person ever to give me ecstasy. And so these were during the years when I was like 11 to 14. And, I didn't know at the time, but I know now that he was grooming me, right? So he would give me a lot of attention, and, he would give me these things and not tell my mom, right?
Okay.
But he used that as a tool to molest me. And one night when he gave me drugs, he came into my room that night at 1 o'clock in the morning and he sexually assaulted me. And then after that happened, it just continued. That abuse continued. So I told my mom about it a few months later when they had gotten into an argument. I want to say it was more like a year later I told her about it. And they were supposed to break up. Well, he was back in the home just a couple days later. So I was left feeling after that like I was the bad person. Like it was my fault. And I had all this shame, and I was only like 13, 14 years old. So what did I do? I didn't want to be in the home anymore. So I started dating a guy, and again, like I was looking for that male figure in my life. So I started dating a guy, and I was at his house all the time. Well, this guy's mom, let us party. It was like the party house, right? Like the teenage party house. Everybody was there partying all the time. So we were partying and experimenting and drinking and stuff. And within a few years, I got pregnant. So I was 16 when I got pregnant, and my dad came back into my life, and he's like, you're not having this baby.
Mhm.
You know, we're going to take care of this. You cannot have any children. You're 16 years old. I'm not ready for grandkids. We're going to go get rid of this baby.
Mm.
And I remember like I wanted to have the baby.
Mhm.
You know, I was excited about it. I knew
Mhm.
I was only 16, but I was excited about it. So he took me to the abortion clinic, and I just remember like going in there. There were girls in there that had like done this many times, right? Like it was no big deal. Like nobody seemed as traumatized as I felt, right?
Right, right.
So they took me back into this like one room. They put me on an ultrasound machine and they let me hear the baby's heartbeat. And they told me that I was 10 and a half weeks pregnant. And then they took me in the next room and they took the baby from me. And at the time, they gave me like this laughing gas. You know, you
Mhm.
don't get any kind of sedatives, but this laughing gas. And I remember I didn't like the way it made me feel. So I didn't use the laughing gas. So, you know, still to this day, like I can hear it. You know, it was very, very traumatizing and vivid, the memories of that are, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. Can I stop real quick? Just because I know the story's going to go way farther than this, but I want to go back a little bit to when you were talking about your mom, and then when you told your mom that this was happening from this man, and then he came back a couple days later. I'm guessing that the man was a pretty good manipulator, of course, because like you said, he was grooming you. But I wonder, did your mom make you feel like you were the one that was making him do that to you? Like it
You
was your fault, like you were promiscuous towards him or something? I'm just wondering, because I've heard that a lot in instances like this.
Well, yeah, she did. And
Yeah.
I think it was more of like her level of denial, you know, that
Mhm.
she just didn't want to believe that.
Yes.
Because even up until just a few years ago, I spoke to her about it a few years ago, right before I got clean. And she told me she thought I was curious, but like
Mhm.
I was like 12, 13 years old. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't
No.
curious. He
No.
was 28, you know.
Yeah.
I had other boys that were my age, you know. So
Yeah.
that wasn't it, but I think it was just her level of denial. At the
Mhm.
time, she was drinking with him.
Okay.
So, you know, it was just, she
Yeah.
wasn't able to accept it at that
Yeah.
moment, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask that real quick while I was thinking about it. So now, so 16 and the abortion happened and here you are.
Right. So here I am. And, you know, like I said, the guy that got me pregnant, we were partying and stuff. And one night he took one, like within the couple of months after the abortion, he took 1.5 pain pills. I wasn't with him the night that it happened. And the next morning they found him dead on his couch.
Oh.
So come to find out, he took 1.5 oxy 80s, which
Okay.
this is like in 2003. You know, we were experimenting or dabbling, you could say, but not
Mhm.
with real heavy stuff. And that was pretty heavy, you know. So they found him on the couch at 9 o'clock in the morning. His sister found him, who
Mm.
actually has died from an overdose as well now. But
Oh.
but you know, I always carried so much shame and guilt for that. Like I always thought, you know, because of what happened with the baby, and you know, I always felt like that was my fault. So I wasn't ever able to process the grief of that.
Mhm.
So I just did, again, like I was looking for somebody to fix me because I wasn't ready to look at me. I was just looking for somebody to fix me.
Mhm.
So I started dating another guy. I mean, I just immediately got with another one.
Mhm.
And that guy, you know, it started like he was just amazing in the beginning, right? He was so sweet, like everything I thought I wanted in a guy, promised me the moon and the stars in the world.
Mhm.
Started to tell me that my shorts were too short and that I was flirting with this guy, and that, you know, just these crazy things that really weren't true.
Right.
You know, it's just nothing I could ever do was right. And he started isolating me from my family and telling me how he didn't like my family, and, you know, just creating these divisions for my family so that I would be alone and under his control. And he started
Mhm.
controlling our money, and, you know, he just gained complete control over me. And then he started physically abusing me.
Okay.
You know, I mean, there was nights where he would throw stuff at me, or he was actually really smart in the way that he never hit me in my face. You
Mhm.
know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
But
Oh
he,
yeah.
yeah.
They know that, right? They know where to put those bruises and everything, yeah.
Yeah. He did actually go to jail one time for domestic violence, but I took him right back,
Mhm.
I really did believe it was my fault because he told me so many times that the reason he was doing the things he was doing is because of what I did.
Mhm.
And when you hear something so many times, you start to believe it,
Mm. Oh yeah, for sure. And to go to that a little bit, because I want people to know, and especially, I mean, men, women, all of it. I was just telling somebody the other day, it was a weird conversation, but it was about my feet. Okay. And for the years, I didn't wear any open-toed shoes because my stepfather told me my toes were ugly always. He was always like, you got the ugliest toes. So I never ever did that. So in my head, I would look at my toes and I'd be like, oh my gosh, they're so ugly. And they're not. I don't have ugly toes. But when we're told that so many times and people don't understand that, you're in these domestic violence relationships, you're in these narcissistic abusive relationships, you're in your life as with the addicts and the alcoholic parents, and you're told all these things and they become your truth eventually. It's not that people be like, well, you should have known better. No, we don't know better because that's all we've been taught and told. So when you say that, I really want people to realize that when they're, because people are quick to judge people, like judge, 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 right? And they don't know what was planted in their brain for so many years. And then finally, as now we're sharing your story of hope, but through that struggle of him telling you, well, it's all your fault, and you believe it's your fault because they have that twisted way of like, I mean, even to this day, my sister is a little bit like that. She'll say something and turn it around and I'll be like, well, how did it become my fault? I didn't do anything. So I'm glad that you kind of said that. I just wanted to
Yeah.
kind of talk about that a little bit. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's crazy how like the things that I feel like they're seeds, right? Like these seeds get planted and over the years they grow and that becomes our narrative and what we believe about ourselves. I
yes,
absolutely agree with that.
yes.
Um, so the guy and I were using, like while all this was going on, we were using, and my addiction was progressing. So I moved on to doing cocaine, and he got me smoking crack with him. Started out as snorting it, and we started smoking it, and money for crack doesn't last long. Okay, so it wasn't long before we were stealing for it, and we had this hustle where he would steal flat screen TVs from Walmart. So this
Oh,
is like back in the day because you cannot get away with that today.
right, right.
But one day he got caught, and on this particular day that he got caught, I wasn't there. Although I had been there so many other times, on
Right.
this one particular day I wasn't there, and he wound up getting jail time while he was for that particular arrest. And he had told me many times prior that if I ever left him, I would never be with anybody else. I knew what he meant. He meant he was going to kill me, and I would never, and I believed him because this dude was like just psychopath, right? I believed him. So when he went to jail, like I just knew this was my chance to get away. So a friend of mine who's now my husband,
Uh,
but a friend of mine, we moved away to Georgia. He had just broke up with his girlfriend. I had just broke up with this guy, or was running from this guy, shall I say, because he didn't
right.
break up with him. But and I ran away to Georgia with him because that's where his family was.
Okay.
And I remember when I first got there, like every single night for the first couple of months, like I would wake up having nightmares or being scared that this guy was going to find me. It was scary getting away from that. Not only the fear of that, but like the things that I believed from him, they stayed with me. It took a long time to heal from that relationship. So yeah, my husband and I moved to Georgia. We weren't married yet, but we started dating and I got a job there. And the plan was to get off of the drugs. That was the plan.
Right.
Well, the person that we moved in with was on bond for manufacturing methamphetamine. So needless to say, we didn't get off the drugs, but we did get a job. I got a job and I started working and I got pregnant by my husband. Well, I really, really wanted to keep the baby because I had already lost a baby.
Right.
So I came to visit my mom. This was probably like a year later, so things had kind of died down with that guy a little bit. And I came to visit my mom so that I could get off of the drugs because I didn't succeed when I moved away. But anyways, and I did. I detoxed off of the drugs and I managed to get pregnant and then have the baby and then get married. And then I got pregnant again and then I had the baby. So I got through all of that abstinent, you know, and I tried like playing Susie Homemaker. Like I thought that I finally found my happily ever after, right? We got married, we had 2 kids, everything was great. My husband works, I'm gonna stay at home, I'm gonna take care of everything. This is what I thought I wanted. But the problem with that is that I had all of this stuff in here that was still so broken inside that even though I was doing what I thought I wanted, I was still miserable because I just had so much stuff inside of me that was not healed, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So for 6 years, you know, I remained abstinent. I took care of my kids when they were younger. You know, we started to create a life up there in Georgia. And about 6 years into it, I came down here into Florida for a visit to my mom, ran into a girlfriend of mine. She had my drug of choice. I used. And I decided it was time to move back to Florida because I wanted my drug of choice, you know? So we did. It took a few months. I told my husband that I missed my family and I wanted to see my family. And then we packed up and came back. He got a job down here and we came back. Well, I got a job at the paper route, throwing newspapers at night. And I would go pick up my drug of choice on the way. Then I would throw newspapers all night long. So that was perfect for the kind of drug I was using. And then I would pick up more on the way home. And then I would play Susie Homemaker for the rest of the day. So I was living this double life, you know, trying to maintain. And it just.
So can I ask what your drug of choice was at that time?
At that time, it was cocaine. I was back on cocaine again. Yeah. Although it did switch over the years, it progressed and changed. But at that point, it was cocaine. So one day while my kids were at school, my neighbor caught me using cocaine through the sliding glass door of my house. She saw me using, and she called the Department of Children and Families on me. So, you know, they showed up one day, and when they got there, I decided honesty was the best policy, right? So I got honest with the lady. I told her that I was using. By this point in time, my husband had found out that I was using and had joined me. So he was using with me. So I was honest with the lady and she said, listen, I'm going to give you 45 days. When I come back, if you're clean, we'll drop the case in what they call unsubstantiated and we'll let it go. So when she came back in 45 days, I had fake pee on hand. I was ready to go.
Wow.
So I passed the test and they closed the case.
And now how old are your kids at this time?
3 and 5.
3 and 5. Okay.
Yeah. So 5 days later, my husband and I got into a like drug induced fight in the middle of Clark Road, or that's in Sarasota. I'm sorry. in Florida. Okay. I'm sorry. But we got into a drug induced fight with our kids in the backseat of the car. Cops came. He got arrested. I jumped out of the car because I was mad, and the car was moving when I jumped out of the car. It was going about 30 miles an hour. So when we got pulled over, I'm covered in blood from where I jumped out. So he got arrested for that. My kids were in the back seat. So this was 5 days after they closed my case unsubstantiated. Needless to say, they came right back. So now we have another case plan. So because I wasn't ready to stop using, I knew the best thing to do would be to take the kids to my mom's house. And that's what I did. So that is where my kids would stay. That was in 2013. And that is where they would stay until just a few years ago when I got clean.
Wow.
Yeah. It was like 6 years.
Now, did you see them then through that time?
I did see them through that time, and my mom would let me come over, you know, but I wasn't present. You know what I'm saying? I was there, but I wasn't present. And if I was sick, I was going to go pick up my drug of choice. There were many times where I was supposed to come see the kids and didn't come see the kids, or I was supposed to, and then I had to leave to go get drugs, you know? So it was just a bad time. And when the kids went over to my mom's house, it gave me, in my mind, I don't know if you would call it a free pass, but a justification on why I can use. Because number one, I'm a failure. I'm a bad mom. I failed my kids. And number two, I don't have my kids.
Right.
and I need to numb this pain. So it just, that's where my addiction really took off, you know?
And now your husband's using it this time too?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
He was using with me, and we both really just spiraled out of control. And that was in 2013. So they wound up closing that particular case plan because the kids were at my mom's. So
Right.
they closed as in non-compliance, but they couldn't do anything because my kids were safe.
Okay. Okay.
So, you know, our using progressed, and we ran away to South Carolina for a little while. Then we came back. We were just running from ourselves, you know?
Right.
And
Right.
I had switched drugs from cocaine to meth and then heroin on top of it. So I was doing meth and heroin then. And I was doing it IV before I was snorting it and smoking it. While I started doing it IV. So like it just all kind of blew up, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And my husband's dad passed away in 2016, and that really, really sent us spiraling out of control. We were like with him when it happened. It was very tragic. It just, those couple of years from 13 to 16, it was just a really, really bad time for us, you know? So right after his dad passed away, a couple months later, my husband started getting, while we were using, he started getting fevers, and you know, he would go kind of unconscious. I didn't know what was going on with him, but he was just not normal. So we
Right.
took him to the hospital, and the hospital told him that he was in kidney failure. And if he
Oh.
left the hospital, he was going to die. For sure, he would die. So he stayed at the hospital for a few days, and then he would leave. And then he would get real sick, and then he'd go back to the hospital, stay for a few days, and leave. And like this went on for a couple of weeks. And finally, when we finally got him back to the hospital to stay, he had come to find out he had a Staph aureus infection in his blood, which
Oh.
had spread into his heart, into his lungs, and into his kidneys. So that was endocarditis in his heart, you
Mhm.
know, and then he had chronic kidney disease in his kidneys, and he had to be on dialysis for about 6 months. And then he also had this infection in his lungs. So they had to put chest tubes, one on each side of his lungs. They go directly into the lung, and they literally like, it kind of looks like an old roll of film, the way that it spins around like this, but it's water. And I guess it's water. I don't know what it is, some sort of liquid.
Right.
And
Right.
it cleans out the lungs 24 hours a day. So he had that in there for about a month. And then he was on IV antibiotics for his endocarditis, vicomycin. And the vicomycin was attacking the kidneys, which were already in failure. So he's on dialysis. And it was just this like, it was crazy, you know, and we didn't know if he was going to make it until the next day. Every single day, we didn't know if he would make it to the next day.
Wow.
And then the hospital got to a point where they wouldn't let me come because I was covered in track marks. You know, they knew I was doing drugs. I mean, I'm sure I played a role in him getting sick, although we all make our own choices. But, you know, I obviously played a role in that. So they didn't want me around. So
Right.
it was just a really crazy time. And I remember that time when he was in the hospital, I remember getting on my knees and praying like I have never prayed in my life. I'm talking about like wholeheartedly, tears coming out of my face, praying that God would heal him
Mhm.
and that he wouldn't die. Because I didn't want my kids to lose their father the way that my father wasn't there when I was little. You
Right.
know, I didn't want that for them, and I didn't want to lose him either.
Right.
So I just remember in that time, like those prayers, and like when I look back on that, I'll get to that in a minute, but I feel like those prayers played a role in where I'm at today, you
Absolutely.
know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So so it took about 6 months for him to get better physically. And then after that, right after he got out of the hospital, we went to the heart failure doctor because they said he had heart failure.
Mm.
So heart failure is like a terminal diagnosis. They say once you have heart failure, they told him he wouldn't live past 5 years.
Wow. And how old were you guys at this time?
Let's see, that was actually 5 years ago from right now. So
Okay.
this was in 2017. So he was 30, 31 or
Wow.
32, 32. Yeah.
So young. Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
So, you know, now that we've made it past this hurdle, now they're saying he's going to die. And I
right.
don't know what happened to me at that time, but I think something inside of me just switched. Like, I don't know if it was a defense mechanism or what that was, but something inside of me just started pushing him over here because I knew I was going to
Mhm.
lose him, you know?
Mhm.
So he got in trouble when he got out of the hospital. Like, he was arrested days later, right? For drug charges or stealing. I don't even know what it was for, to be honest. It was something like misdemeanor petty. And he took something in Florida that they call comprehensive treatment court.
Okay.
Comprehensive treatment court, like, the conditions of the court were like, just don't do drugs and you'll be fine. You'll get through this, you know? But so that started his journey kind of away from me. You know, when he would relapse, he would go to jail, and then they would send him to rehab, and then he would get out, use, and then go to jail, and then go to rehab. And it was like this cycle. So from 2017 till 2019, he was like over here.
Okay.
And for me, you know, when you're a woman in active addiction, that opens a lot of doors for you when you're by yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that for me became like, you know, all bets are off. I got no kids now. I've got no husband now. I'm a complete failure. I've ruined my life. There's no hope for me.
Right.
You know, I might as well just we're gonna ride this train till it crashes, you know. So I was willing to do whatever I needed to do to get the next one. I didn't care if I lived or died. You know, I didn't think I was worthy of living and having anything. You know, I hated myself. So, you know, I started dating drug dealers and sleeping with people for money, and I got involved with some really dangerous people. And the last guy that I was with before I got arrested, he was like, it was just really, he was dangerous. You know, by day he was like a drug dealer gang kind of guy, and by night he was into like the dark arts and cross-dressing, and it was weird. It was weird, and I had never seen any of this stuff before. You know, it was satanic is what it was.
Okay.
So so it was just a really dark time for me, because I was always raised like in church and to know the Lord, and like to see this, I didn't even know that kind of stuff existed. Like, I've heard about it in the movies, but I didn't know that was real. You know?
Yeah.
So it was just a really, really scary time for me. And because of the drugs that I was using, I think that invokes even more of that dark spiritual warfare. So there's an acronym for meth, right? My entrance to hell.
Ooh,
That's real. You know, that's real.
I've never heard that acronym, but that's real.
Yes, it really is, you know. And so I just experienced a lot of really dark stuff during that time. And I was terrified for my family's life and for my life. And, you know, I thought I was going to die with a needle in my arm. And I had accepted my fate, you know.
Right. Can I ask you real quick, through all that, did you ever overdose?
You know what? I don't want to say I was careful or I was graced. I don't know. But I used day in and day out. I lived to use and I used to live. It is all that I did.
Okay.
But I never had to be Narcan.
Okay.
There were times where I would fall out. Maybe the people I was with just didn't care enough to take me to the hospital or call the ambulance. But there were different occasions where I would fall out, or one time I had a seizure. One time I overdosed with my husband in the car. He took me to the hospital. When we got to the hospital, I woke up. So there were different times where I overdosed, but never a time where I had to be Narcan.
Okay. Okay.
So, you know, so on my birthday of July 2018, I got arrested. And this cop that arrested me, I'm going to tell you, he had already pulled me over so many times. He knew who I was. He was out to get us. He had towed 2 of my cars, arrested 2 of my associates. Like, this dude was out to get me. You know, like, we knew each other by name very well. So the day that he arrested me, he got me on driving on a suspended license, 3rd or subsequent, which is a felony in Florida. And I thought that I was going to be slick and smuggle drugs through the jail, because I didn't want him to know I had drugs on me.
Okay.
That caught me 3 more felonies.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. And I remember being so
4
mad.
felonies in that arrest?
4 felonies and 1 misdemeanor for that.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I mean, they caught the drugs on me, so that was charged. And then smuggling contraband into a detention facility is another charge. And then they've got me for the narcotic equipment that I was carrying. Like, they got me with the whole thing.
Wow. Wow.
Not one of my better decisions.
No. I'm glad you're here to talk about it.
Yes. So I remember being mad at him though, like, how are you going to arrest me on my birthday, bro? Like, come on, it's my birthday. You could see it on my license. But,
Yeah,
when I look back on that today, I'm super grateful for it because I wouldn't be sitting here right now if he didn't arrest me on my birthday.
right, right.
So when I got out of, so they decided to release me on something called supervised release. I don't have like a super lengthy criminal history. I've been arrested on a few misdemeanors, obviously driving on a suspended because this was my third one. But I don't have felonies. Like this was my first like big girl charges. So they released me on something called supervised release. And basically what supervised release is you just have to like call this number like twice a week or something. If they call their number, you got to go drop while you're waiting to go to court.
Okay, yep.
So the plan was just don't use and I can stay out of jail.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know how to not do that. So I went right back to the drug dealer boyfriend. And within hours, I was using again, so it wasn't long before I violated my supervised release and got back to jail. Well, this time when I was in jail, like I stayed in jail for a couple of weeks. I stayed long enough to go to court, and on felonies, I think it's like about 2 months that I was in jail.
Okay.
So when I went back in front of the judge, they released me on probation. Terms of my probation. Just don't use. Report to probation once a month. I had no fees. I had no restitutions. It was like cut and dry. Report to probation. Don't do drugs. Well, I got caught trying to falsify a drug test in the probation office. Had to go to jail that night. Not before they took me to the hospital to remove the bottle that I had inside of me. So.
Did you say the bottle you had inside of you?
I did.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like, I was trying to fake a drug test. I carried fake pee up inside of me and I got caught in the probation office with the fake pee inside of me.
Oh my goodness.
It was a mess. It was a mess. It really was.
Real quick, I want to talk about that a little bit because what you're saying right now, somebody would be like, it's insane. And people don't realize, and hopefully a lot of people don't ever realize the insanity that comes with addiction. It is like, and I say that so because I can say, I mean, I've been there, so I know, but and it's not even like you don't even be like, oh, this is not the smartest thing I should do. It doesn't even matter because at that point you're like, I'm not going to jail, so I'm going to do this. And this is what's you don't even think of how insane it really is until you're talking about it now. And you're like, good Lord, what was I thinking? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any lengths, and you like you will sit and cook up these schemes in your head of how you're going to get away with it, or covering myself in makeup so nobody could see the marks from picking my face or the track marks on my arm. I mean, wearing long sleeves in the middle of summer in Florida, like you'll just go to any lengths,
Yeah.
But so I got released on probation from jail. And so I got caught falsifying the drug test in probation. So I went back to jail. Well, the kids were still with my mom at this time, but the probation office, I had put that as my address for probation. Well, probation office kind of put the two and two together and called the Department of Children and Families because I got caught using at the probation office because I was falsifying the drug test. And I had the location of my kids on my paperwork. So he called Department of Children and Families on me, or CPS, Child Protective Services.
Right.
So they put a case plan on me, but I wasn't ready yet. I wasn't ready to face up to that. So, I went to jail. I got out of jail, went right back to the damn drug dealer boyfriend, Yeah. So it was just, I didn't know that you have to change people, places, and things,
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
But at the same time, I don't think I was ready. I wasn't ready yet. So, but yeah, so I went back to the drug dealer boyfriend. So my first violation of probation was 42 days before I got arrested. And then I went back to jail. And this time, like during these violations, like I've got a case plan kind of waiting on me. The time has already started accruing and you have about 12 months to complete a case plan. So I'm wasting time, and I know I am, but I just wasn't ready to face it. But so 42 days before my first violation, I went back to jail, was in jail a couple of months. They reinstated my probation. And the plan was, I don't want to go back to jail this time. I'm not going to use this time. I've detoxed. I can do this.
Right.
But again, like I didn't know how to not do it.
Right.
So 30 days before my second violation. And so during that, like I got violated 30 days later, but I hadn't got caught yet. It took about 2 more months to get caught.
Okay.
So I was with a drug dealer boyfriend. We're living in a shed behind somebody's trap house. And literally in the shed, there's nothing but a bed and a shed and a dirt floor. Like there's no toilet, there's no shower, there's no like microwave or refrigerator. Like
Right.
it's the drug dealer boyfriend, the bed, and the drugs. That's it, you know? And again, just like you said, that's where the insanity of my disease led me, because that's where I thought I wanted to be.
Mhm.
But it's not, you know. And I just remember nights in that shed, like it was so dark, you know, spiritually speaking, and
Right.
it was dangerous. It was a really bad time. So my mom found out where I was at, right?
Okay.
So my mom called, I don't know if they have this where you're from, but they have something called Crime Stoppers here.
Okay.
So that's where you can report anonymous tips. And if your tip gets an arrest from the tip, then you get paid for it.
Oh, okay. We do have that here. Yeah. Yeah.
So my mom found out where I was at. And I had felony warrants. So,
Oh,
so she called Crime Stoppers on me.
oh my goodness.
$280 to turn her daughter in. And not only did she get paid for that, but she's able to sleep at night now, you know, because I was using heroin like
For
daily.
sure.
You know,
For
I could have
sure.
died at any moment.
Yes.
It was
Yes.
bad, you
Yeah.
know?
So that part of it too, I wanted that I remember I talked about this a lot to people, because when you have somebody that's in active use, especially, you know, with the opiates and heroin and all of that, that is you don't sleep at night, whether you're worried that they're going to break into your house and take things, whether you're going to get that phone call. And when they do go to jail, I can remember being with my ex, like when he was in jail, I was at peace, and so was his mom. Like, whoo, we know where he's at. We're not going to get that phone call, just like you're saying, you know. So for your mom to do that, I'm sure there was multiple reasons why she did that, right? Right. Yeah. So,
And it wasn't
and
about the
she
money.
could sleep at night, you
Yes,
know? Yeah. Yeah. So,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, you know, my dad said the same thing. And now that I'm in recovery, and I work with a lot of recovering addicts on a regular basis, and oftentimes we relapse. That's not part of recovery, but sometimes that's a part of somebody's story. You
Right.
know, so when that happens and they wind up in jail, I'm like, thank you, Jesus, you know, they're
Yes.
okay now. They might have a chance to get this, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
So
For sure.
absolutely.
For sure. So now your mom has you arrested and you're in jail again.
So I just want to say the day before I went to jail was June 30th, 2019, and I was living in this shed, and I used my drug of choice. I used heroin, and I fell out on the floor that night.
Okay.
And it must have been maybe 10 o'clock at night, because when I woke up, it was almost daylight. And when I woke up, I was slumped over, my legs were asleep. Like, I, to this day, do not know how I lived through that. The guy was right there, awake. He didn't care if I lived or died. He wasn't going to call the ambulance on me, you
Right.
know, because that's not what you do when you're in drug addiction. You don't
Right.
call help. If
Right.
you fall out, that's your problem, you know?
Yeah.
So I woke up about daylight, and I did what any good addict does. I did another one, you know, and it was about an hour after that the police showed up to pick me up.
Wow.
So the cop that picked me up, he was super compassionate. He was, you know, he was a really good guy. You know, I think he knew maybe that I was just lost in drug addiction, but he took me back to the jail and he talked to me. He was super compassionate on the way there. And to be honest with you, most of the law enforcement that I ran into during my addiction was super compassionate to me.
Yeah.
So I got to the jail, and by this point, I've got 4 felonies and a misdemeanor, and now 2 violations of probation on 2 different cases. So every time that you commit a crime, you get a certain amount of points, right?
Okay.
And when you get a certain amount, and violations are also a certain amount of points. And that amount of points that you have in total will determine whether you're going to go to prison or not, whether your sentence is under a year or over a year, which is prison. Anything
Right.
under a year is jail, anything over is prison. So the points that I had added up from my felonies and my violations was 56.7 points, and you need 44 to go to prison, right?
Oh.
So I'm looking at prison time now.
Right.
Not only am I looking at prison time, but the day after I get to the jail, the Department of Children and Families finds out where I'm at too. So they show up to the jail and they give me a drug test, and I fail for 4 different kinds of drugs. But they've already put a case plan on me because my PO called them 6 months ago, you know?
Okay.
So I'm 6 months into this thing, maybe 4 months into this thing. And, you know, so just the whole weight of the world came all down on me at once, you know?
Right.
And not only that, I didn't have my drug of choice to numb my feelings anymore. There was no escaping this.
Right.
You know?
Right. And you're detoxing too, right?
Yes.
Yes.
That part.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I was in what they call medical in the jail that I was at, and that's where you go to detox. And it was a horrible, horrible detox. You know, I got no bond. Nobody will take my phone calls. I'm not allowed to talk to my kids. Nobody is going to send me money because they're afraid I'm going to use it for drugs in the jail. You know, DCF is just fame. I'm looking at going to prison, and I've got nothing to numb me anymore.
Wow.
So it just, I was at a place where I was just so freaking broken.
Mm-hmm.
I was so tired of being this person,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I couldn't escape it. So now, like, when I look back on that moment in my life, like, that was my desperation, you know, and I needed that. Like, today I call that my gift of desperation, because I
Awesome.
needed that.
Yeah.
You know, that desperation turned into some willingness for me today.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, I followed a girlfriend of mine to a part of the jail after the detox that they called the recovery pod. So in the
Okay.
city that I live in, I'm so grateful for the town that I live in and the judicial system that we have, because we have a part of the jail that's for recovery, and they bring in meetings there 4 times a day. Like, you can't miss a meeting there. If you're going to be over there, it's a nice part of the jail. They have vending machines, you know, it's much nicer, but you got to go to meetings, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
So these people so I went over there, and these people started coming in, and they started telling me their stories that they had lost their children, and they had lost their marriage, and they had lost everything, but they found a way to get it all back, you know?
Yeah.
And they were happy, and they were laughing, and they, you know, they were experiencing what I wanted, you know? So that's where the seeds of hope started to be planted for me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so another thing that they do in there is a church comes in every Saturday. Bayside is what the name of the church is. And the lady that came in that Saturday, or one Saturday that I was in there, brought in some music, and she played a song by Lauren Dangle called Rescue.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never heard it before that. And I just remember, like, when I heard that song for the first time ever, and it says, "I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS." That I knew that I had been rescued. I hadn't been arrested. I had been rescued.
Yes.
So it changed the way that I looked at it, you know, and I remember sitting in jail, like, laughing for the first time in years, and feeling more free than I had ever felt in my life. And the freedom that I was feeling was freedom from active addiction, you know?
Yeah.
And I just remember, like, I gotta be honest, I enjoyed my stay in that jail, you know? I didn't have to look over my shoulder anymore. I didn't have to, you know, worry about who I'm going to screw or who I'm going to steal from to get the next one. Like, I experienced some true freedom.
Wow.
But like I said, I still had this case plan looming over me, and prison looming over here, you know, so I still had these things on my plate. And one day I was in a meeting. My public defender called me on the phone, and they're like, "Listen, we just got the offer in from the state's attorney. The minimum amount that your points will allow you is 20 and a half months in prison. If we don't take this offer, you know, on VOP, you go to see the judge every 2 weeks. So, like, if we continue it, we're going back in 2 weeks, they're going to offer you more, right? So we might as well just take the offer." I had court the next morning. And like I told you before, I was already 4 months into my case plan, or 4 to 6 months into my case plan. So if I took this offer to prison, that would mean that I would have no shot to be able to get my kids back, so that would be it. I'm going to prison. This is what it's going to be. So when I got off the phone with my public defender, there was a person bringing in a meeting that day. And she asked me what happened on the phone after the meeting. So I told her about it, and the next morning I go to court. I still remember to this day, like they gave us little devotional books in there, like, little inspirational readings.
Yeah.
The devotional for that day, the title of it was "Let the Prison Doors Be Open." I could cry thinking about it.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm on my way to court, and when you're in jail, you go through these series of boxes on your way to the courtroom, right? It's holding cells. You go from one holding cell to another, to another, to another. Finally, you get in the courtroom and you're in a holding cell off on the side.
Okay.
So I'm in this last holding cell, and all the girls before me had gone in. So I was the last one in there, and I'm in there by myself. And I just remember, for the first time in my life, like, I said, you know what, God, like, if this is what you want for my life, if I got to go to prison and my mom's going to take these kids, like, fine, whatever it is that you want to do. But if there's another way for me, I surrender. I'm ready to do whatever it is you want me to do, So I get into the courtroom, and that lady from the day before was in court. Little did I know that that lady was on the board at a treatment center in my town, and she had made some phone calls that night to get me accepted into treatment.
Wow.
So instead of going to prison, which is where I thought I was going, I got accepted into treatment. So not only did this mean that I didn't have to go to prison, that meant that I could work on getting my kids back. And I had already experienced so much just joy in that little bit of time in jail. I was liking this recovery thing,
Yeah.
And the judge told me that day, he's like, this is your chance. If you come back in my courtroom, you will go to prison for a long time. And I believed him, So when he said, this is your chance, I ran with that. I mean, when I got to treatment, they told me, if I got to jump and do cartwheels to stay clean, that's what I was going to do. I was willing to do whatever I had to do, whatever. So I started working, going to meetings, doing chores, doing all the basic kind of little things that they teach you to do in treatment, learning how to live and make good choices and do the next right thing, and keep coming back one day, all those little things that they teach you, right?
Oh yeah.
So my husband showed up when I was in treatment, and it had just kind of worked out that he was in a treatment facility in the middle of Florida. He got released from that treatment center, and he showed up at my treatment center, and he was free, right? He was still on probation, but he was free from all that other stuff. And he told me, he's like, Sonya, I don't care about all this other stuff that happened before. He's like, I just want to work this out, and I want to be a family again. And that was all that I wanted. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just didn't think that was possible for me anymore. So, we started like doing visitations on Sunday. He would come visit me, and I took a parenting class while I was in treatment, so that I could work on getting my kids back to complete the case plan, because they had assigned me certain things I had to do, right?
Right.
And that treatment center, I did 10 weeks of intensive drug treatment. That treatment center was the very first thing in my life that I've ever successfully completed. I never completed high school, couldn't hold a job, couldn't keep it. I've been suspended on my license more than I've ever had a license. You know what I mean? So I've always failed at everything. And that was the first thing that I ever did successfully. And the suggestion of my sponsor, because I got a sponsor in that treatment center, was to go to a halfway house. So a halfway house, in case you don't know what it is, it's just like a house where a bunch of women, it's either women or men. Of course, I went to the women's, but a bunch of women live together. You share a room with another woman. You guys work on yourselves. You learn to get a job, pay your bills, it's just a transitional house, basically.
Right. Yeah.
So I went to a halfway house, and my husband was at his own halfway house.
Okay.
And we both were working our own program of recovery. And so by this time, that 4 to 6 months had added up in my case plan. And I was getting closer to a year,
Right.
and I only had a year to get this stuff done.
Okay.
So I was about, I think I was 7 months clean. I want to say I was 7 months clean. And my husband was right behind me on that. So we had started saving up our money and saving for a place. And we got a place. We moved back in together on Valentine's Day in 2020. And COVID happened right then, right?
Right then. Yes.
Yeah. So there was supposed to be a lot more going on with the case plan, but COVID kind of limited things where it worked out in our favor because our
Okay.
kids got to come home the next month. So we brought the kids home. We started transitioning them in March. And then in April of 2020, we officially got reunified over Zoom court. We got reunified, and the kids were like officially in my custody in our home, So, and that's a whole nother thing. Like when I brought my kids home, I would love to say that was just like,
Ah, right.
but it
Yeah.
wasn't,
No.
they didn't trust me. They had been
Right.
gone for 6 years. And even though I had been there, they saw paraphernalia. They saw mom falling out on the floor. Like they saw this stuff,
Mhm.
so it's been a journey to get to where we're at now.
Yeah.
But I knew just kind of the way that things happen. And I fully believe from my heart of hearts that God laid this path and made a way when there was no way. So
Yeah.
I knew that if I just continued to do the next right thing and not use one day at a time, that these things will start to work themselves out. And they have,
Mhm.
But just to touch on what I said a little bit about the hospital, when Stephen was in the hospital, it's my husband's name, by the way. And I prayed. I got on my knees and I prayed. I believe now today that those prayers that I prayed for his healing and for his deliverance came through both of us. I received that blessing as well. Not only did he get healed and delivered, but I did too. I
Yeah.
just wanted to say that.
No,
But
that's
so let me see. So in October of 2020, we officially closed our case plan because after you get your kids, they watch you for another 6 months.
sure.
I was sentenced to rehab followed by what they call community control, which is like house arrest basically, but you don't have to wear a bracelet. You just have to report where you are 24 hours a day. So I was sentenced to house arrest for a year, followed by another year of drug offender probation. Same PO, the one that I got caught false drug test in the office. But I will tell you, that man saved my life. And
Yes.
I just could not say enough good things about him today. Like through that journey, I was so grateful when I finished probation that he was my PO because he got to see this like
Sure.
really happen, So
Yeah.
it was cool. I'm super grateful for all of those people that played a role in my life in getting clean,
Yeah. Like that lady that you were talking about. I mean, she was just like a godsend angel, right? I mean, for her to come up and talk to you and say, well, what happened on that phone call? And then all that to transpire, I always say that like, whatever anybody believes, I believe God, you believe God, but the universe, whatever you want to believe, if we just got to watch those signs and those people and the things and remember that it might not be something that we want to happen right at that time, but in the long run, it was something that was supposed to happen to benefit us,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that with all my heart. And I try to keep in touch with all of these people, but especially her, because she did
Yes.
play a really big role in my life. And so I've always wondered, like, what was it that made her want to help me?
Mhm.
What did she see? Because I didn't see it back then. Like she
Yeah.
saw something in me that I didn't see in myself.
Mhm.
And I remember sharing in one of her meetings one day, I was 34 years old. I've never done anything right my whole life. I've never been anything but a failure. It's over for me. There's no point in even trying. And I'm just speculating that maybe that's what she heard, but I
Mhm.
remember feeling that way and saying that in her meeting. But, I was wrong. Like, that was the disease of addiction lying to me in my own voice and telling me that I am not good enough and I'm going to fail. But that was a lie, you
Yes,
know?
yes.
So,
Because look at so I guess we're gonna fast forward now to right now. You're moving, like you guys have a new home you're moving into, right?
yes. So I am a convicted felon. I will just tell you, I'm a convicted felon because of one of the ways that I got the treatment offer was to become convicted. So I'm a convicted felon, right?
Okay.
And I didn't finish high school, so we were both working like mediocre jobs. We moved into an apartment. That's where we're at now. We've been here for 2 years and 2 months now. And I got a mediocre job for a little while, and then I got an offer to work at a real estate company. So I started doing that, and I started studying for my license. I went to school for the licensing. I just recently went in front of the Department of Business and Professional Regulation to ask for licensing because I'm a convicted felon, and I got accepted.
Awesome. Yes.
It's amazing, I mean, there really is hope after dope and life after all those things. And I think that a lot of people, especially like convicted felons and people that have suffered from years of drug addiction, like, it's hard, I mean, there's no doubt about it that it does make it harder, but it's not impossible. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Right. When
But
you just said that about the hard, it is hard, but when you listen to your story, how hard was that life you were living, right? So if you take the 2 and 2 and put it like this, like hard, yes, the drug addiction is hard. And this is hard, but the benefits from this hard are amazing. But it's just putting your mind to it and really knowing, like, we always say you choose your hard, right? You choose your hard. And for me, whenever I'm talking to anybody in recovery, just like with you, I always say, don't ever forget how sick you were. Because I think it's so important, because that's when people become complacent. They forget. Don't forget. I will never forget the day I quit drinking, and I just say this, and I'm sure it's kind of graphic, but the yellow bile I vomited, my eyes were yellow, and every day it was like that, and the pain, I'll never forget that. And I'll never stop talking about it, because I never want to be complacent and say, oh, well, I won't be like that again. So I think that that's a big thing, like remembering how hard it was then. And like you said, it's hard, and that's the thing too, I think, Sonya, that people don't, we're going through life still, right? Life happens to us still. We have things happen. We have death. We lose things. We have, emotions, but now we learn to live with them differently, right? And to accept them and know how to use the tools to get through. And you use tools, right? You go to NA and things.
I'm
Yes.
very active in NA, and I have a sponsor. I've worked through steps. I sponsor other girls. I go into that facility that I went through. I go into that facility every Sunday and I bring in a meeting now, so definitely come full circle,
Yes. Yes.
But so I just kind of diverted from your question, but so we started getting jobs and just working and saving and working on fixing our credit. When I got in recovery, my credit score was like a 480 or something. It was really low. It was under 500. I know that.
Mhm.
So we started working on our credit, and we locked into this contract with the house about a year ago. Actually, it's been a year this month. We've been waiting on it to be built. And I will say, like, when my kids lived with my mom, might make me cry. When my kids lived with my mom, every night when they would pray for their forever home when we
Mhm.
weren't with them. You know what I mean? So in 9 days, we get to move into our forever home.
Oh,
And
that's
my kids get to have their own room, so for me, like, that's just the most amazing thing ever. I'm so grateful that I get to do that and be present for them for this,
yes. How old are your kids now?
they're 12 and 13
12 and 13. Wow.
boys.
Boys. Okay. And so such a great, I mean, and a great time for them. That's a great age for them to have their forever home, right? I mean, really, that teenage years are rough. We know that. Well, we listened to your story, what you went through for your teenage years.
Right.
And so for them to be with their mom and their dad in their forever home, and knowing that you guys are working to make sure that they have the best life that they can, and that they know the struggle you went through, but now they're seeing the strength that you're at, and what greatness that is for them.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You have an amazing story. Like,
Thank you.
this story is so good. And I know when Natasha told me, and I was like, well, I need to talk to her then, and so I was super excited to hear it all. And I mean, it's great that, I'm just grateful to know you, I guess is what I want to say. And just to know that, so for anybody out there listening, that you're going through these struggles of, especially addiction, there is hope out there. And I know, Sonya, I like when you said, and I don't like that you said it, but how broken you felt, worthless you felt, you were a failure, you had all these things and you weren't worthy of anything, is how you felt. And I have tattoos all over my body with affirmations, because I was that person too, but right here's a perfect, look at how beautiful she is. And her TikToks, I love watching your TikToks, because you're just, and you and your husband together. And I'm just like, this is what it's about. This is why we are out here. And this is why you share too, and you share it on your TikTok, share it out loud. We need to stop having that stigmatism towards, is that what I say? Stigmatism.
Yeah.
Not the eye stigma, whatever that is. I can't, I'm like, wait, what am I saying? But you know what I mean? We can't have that, to know that people do recover and we can get through it, and not think that because you're using and that you still were a beautiful person, you were just in an addiction, and I think that's important for people to realize, because for years, when I quit drinking myself, I was a very functioning alcoholic, and I popped Vicodin and stuff like that. I didn't really have a drug of choice like that, but alcohol was definitely my drug of choice, but I was very functioning. And when I quit, I remember my mom was like, well, you don't really have that much of a problem. And I'm looking at her like, Mom, I weigh 80 pounds. My eyes are yellow. I have pancreatitis, but my mom's picture was beating, cheating, just all of the things that go hand in hand with it, with her judgment of it, the bums on the street, and here I was working and everything else. So, people judge alcoholics and addicts so much, and that just really needs to stop, because we're just people like you are, it's just,
Right.
oh, now I'm going to get a little emotional, because that's it. We're just people. And through our life, unfortunately, the choices have came and we made those bad choices, but here we are today, and I see some of the people comment on some of your stuff that I'm like, oh, that was not a very nice comment, but I love how you just like, okay, I'm going to show your comment and I'm going to, you know what I mean? Because it's just awesome for you to be out there sharing your story for people. I just think it's great. And
isn't that crazy though? I never expected, like, I just started sharing on TikToks and Facebook Reels, and it has blown up so much. I feel like people are longing for that hope in the darkness, and what I love about it is you can reach people in their darkness when they wouldn't talk to anybody else. So I love that. It's so cool.
Yeah, I love that you're doing that. And that's the whole reason why I've done Hope, is that same exact reason, because people feel like, and I've had people when they share their story that have never shared their story ever before. And whether it's addiction or anything, they're sharing it and they're like, oh, I feel better because I got to share my story, So it's just all around. I think it's goodness. And I'm glad that we connected. And I know I can't wait to see your house. I'm so excited to see your house. You said 9 days.
9 days. Yes.
Awesome. That's good.
I'm so excited.
I bet. So is there any last words you want to say to anybody or anything, before we wrap this up?
I will just say, if you are that mom or that person who's out there lost in addiction, or maybe you're the mother or the father of somebody that's lost out there in addiction, no matter what, no matter how dark it looks, just don't give up hope and keep praying for that person. Because like I said before, I believe that it was not only my prayers, but my mom's prayers and my mother-in-law's prayers and all of these people that prayed us to where we are today. Just keep praying about that and holding on to hope that it will happen, because I never thought that this day would come for me. But it's not, I didn't do anything special. I'm just a recovering addict. So this is available to anybody. So no matter what it looks like, just don't give up hope. And that's
Yes.
all. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Sonya. I appreciate you jumping on here. And like I said, I'll be following you and sharing your TikToks and stories and stuff. And I hope that everybody has an amazing day. Thank you for getting on Hope, and we will talk to you all soon. Thanks.